On November 23rd of this year, Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, the day after America celebrated the myth of unity, of reconciliation, of relationship between the colonizers who overtook this land and the native indigenous folks who dwelled in this land for millennia preceding the invasion of the Europeans. On that day, Samuel Olival Bruno, an undocumented Mexican immigrant, who's an upstanding citizen, member of society, went in to meet with ICE as a part of what was being communicated as a routine meeting on the pathway to American citizenship. He was going in to get his biometrics done, his fingerprints, etc. Hopes of this being one more step in a long, grueling process to get a court date in order to hopefully receive legal residency, to be able to stay here with his family, with his wife, who has lupus, with his 19-year-old son. They went in that morning, surrounded by members of their church community from Citywell Church here in Durham, North Carolina. Samuel has been living in the church building that has been serving as a sanctuary church in order to protect Samuel from being deported. From what I understand, he has been living there for the better part of a year now, honoring all of his appointments, honoring all of his meetings with immigration, honoring all of what has been asked of him in order to commit to this legal process in what, in my opinion, is a corrupt and evil system. And around 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning, on Friday morning, Samuel walks into the building with his son. And plain-clothed ICE agents immediately detain him, grab him, take him down, and rush him out a back door into a van in attempts to take him to a detention center that he might be deported. This immediately turned into quite a scene where members of the local church who were faithful in protesting such acts of evil, such acts of injustice, surrounded the vehicle in attempts to prevent Samuel from being taken off somewhere. Police descended on the scene. Samuel's son, Daniel, was arrested for trying to protect his father from these plainclothes agents. Folks praying and singing hymns and demanding his release for hours before police arrested pastors and local leaders in the community and other members of that church community, arrested them and took them off to Wake County Jail. Along with Samuel, protesters demanding justice, having been lied to by the system for their attempts to work within the system to bring about justice. Samuel and his family having received death threats back home in Mexico from the cartel, seeking asylum from violence in his own country and in his family's country, that if we only look and read between the lines and look at our history, we would realize that the violence in Latin America is created and then proliferated by the United States. By our policies, by our military incursions into Latin America, we created, as Americans, and our participation and our complicity as American citizens, we participated in the violent acts that have ravaged Latin America, which has then created a world in which folks are seeking asylum and coming north, hoping that perhaps maybe the country that caused such disarray might create space for them to find hope, to breathe, to start a new life. And yet, continually abused are the Latin American people, continually abuse our Latinx folks in America as a result of this cruel system that began with that first Thanksgiving, that began with Columbus's arrival on these lands, that has been perpetuated by kings and queens across the world, who have said that there are other people to whom I somehow have declared I have a right over, and so I will enter into a place that is not mine and take control of that which is not mine. Not just the land, not just property, not just material goods, but the people themselves. I too will have possession over them. This idea that somehow I could have ownership over another person, removing their dignity, removing their agency, removing their capacity to be free from themselves, because I determine that somehow I have a right over their lives, because I have determined that my sense of ego, my sense of royalty, my sense of position in the world gives me such a right to do this very thing. This is the curse that has haunted us for centuries now. This is the inheritance of Christian supremacy throughout the world. Samuel Oliver Bruno and his family is one story among many where people find themselves in an impossible situation and are simply hoping that justice might come, that hope might come, that joy might once again come, that freedom might actually be possible and accessible. And so, hear the word of God from the Gospel according to John on this feast of Christ the King, the one King who has come to set all the captives free. The one King that has come to set all the captives free, to deliver us from bondage, to deliver us and set us into a new world that is here to come yet. Behold, he is making all things new, says the word of God. But here in this moment, chapter 18, verse 33, follows Jesus' arrest, Jesus' betrayal by his disciples, Peter's denial of his relationship to Jesus, the questioning of Jesus by the high priests and the religious authorities of the time. Jesus is now taken before Pilate. Governor of this region, a Roman political official. And so verse 33 reads, Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus and asked him, Are you the King of the Jews? Jesus answered, Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me? Pilate replied, I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done? Jesus answered, My kingdom is not from this world. My followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews, but as it is, my kingdom is not from here. Pilate asked him, So you are a king? Jesus answered, You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. Pilate asked him, what is the truth? This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be unto God. What is the truth? Such a powerful, provocative question that Pilate asked Jesus after Jesus gives what seems in one way to be cryptic, but a very direct statement that I am king. And the king is here in your midst. I am king, but my kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is not one that you can access tangibly, that you can see walls and monuments built up, see entire government buildings established for. Like we spoke about last week. Jesus looked at the temple, looked at these buildings in Jerusalem and mocked them. Because power and glory and justice and freedom and hope and peace and love and mercy were not to be found in these buildings, but those buildings were to be tossed into the sea, and instead in their place a new creation was to be established. Jesus is saying, my kingdom is not of this world, and yet for this purpose I have come into the world. I, who am God, says Jesus, I, the Logos, I, the divine holy word, I, a part of the Holy Trinity, this movement of glory and love and justice. I have come out of that perfect community, this God as one and three in one, into the world to declare with my mouth that this nonsense is coming to an end, and that there is a different way forward. There is a different way of living. There is a different way than this way of oppression. There is a different way than the ongoing marginalization of at-risk communities. There is a different way than wielding power abusively. There is a different way of being in this world, and surely I am here to show you that there is a different way, and that very different way that I have testified of is the reason why you are about to put me to death. This is the truth, Pilate. This is the truth of God. This is the truth of Jesus. That the life that Jesus lives is what brings him to the cross. That the offering of a new way forward, a new way of living, a new way of being in our bodies and being in the world and being in relationship to one another, in relationship to the land, that speaks as an affront to the imperial powers of Rome, to the imperial powers of the religious authorities who ensured Jesus' arrest, who speaks as an affront to the evangelical church today that would advance these kinds of abuses we see in the case of Samuel Olivar Bruno and his family and other immigrants who are trying to find justice, who are trying to find a better life in the world. The truth of Jesus is this, that these powers will not last, and that they are coming down. And that is why the people are terrified. That is why the authorities, the religious authorities, wanted to put Jesus to death. That is why Pilate goes forward out of fear of Caesar, goes forward and crucifies Jesus. The truth of Jesus is that Jesus interacts with us, enters into the world as a new David, and responds to the corrupt figure, the abusive person of David, and Jesus comes in. I will redeem even this. I will establish a kingdom that looks at the kingdom that came before, the one you worship so much, the one you love so much, the one that the figure of David that fascinates you so much. That individual who is so corrupt, so abusive, a rapist, a murderer, and a warmonger, I will stand in his place and redeem even this. Jesus is coming into the world to testify that a new thing is coming, that a new world is possible, that freedom indeed is possible. The cost of this freedom is high. It cost Jesus his life. It's cost many others their life as well. It's cost the sense of safety and security of all of the protesters fighting and advocating for someone. Cost the emotional well-being of all the protesters who watched. Some will be detained and the other protesters be detained. It cost the trauma, the sheer trauma of proximity, of hearing a woman wail as her son and her husband is being taken away. It cost that poor woman her own sense of well-being and security and her family. Freedom, in the words of Angela Davis, is a constant struggle that costs us something. It is not something that is handed out for free. It is a cost that most often has only been paid by women of color, queer folks of color, and people of color in general. It is a cost that is incredibly high. But on the other side of paying that cost, there is the hope that freedom will indeed come. There's a cost we keep on paying. It is a cost that we hold one another accountable to. We hold each other up in, that we provide each other with encouragement for, that we share our resources in order to bring about. But it is a constant struggle that costs us something. But it is because we pay the cost because we believe in the words of Jesus that there is indeed a kingdom that is not of this world. And by that, not some ethereal place in heaven that we will run off to and watch this whole place burn, but instead a kingdom that is different than every kingdom that we have ever interacted with. A country like America that goes and invades nation after nation, bombing them and massacring the people, installing puppet governments, which then leads to the dangerous movement of people who are willing to traverse jungles and deserts and streams and rivers and raging waters to come into the very country that cost them their lives, their livelihoods to begin with, in hopes of seeking new hope. There is a different kingdom in this world, one that does not prevent the movement of people, but one that provides for all of its citizens. For this, Jesus says, I came into the world, and everyone who belongs to this truth listens to my voice. Jesus is calling us to consider how our comfort might be preventing us from moving into participation with the work that Jesus came into this world to do. That is to testify that there is a different kingdom that is possible for us. And when I say that it's possible, so I want to make sure that we're not confounding this with some evangelical theology that we will die one day and go to heaven, and so we just need to live, like we just need to hold on till this one's over. Yes, we got to hold on, but for the kingdom that will be established here, for the kind of world that is possible here, planting orchards and gardens, building new cities of hope. And sure, a day is coming, and I pray that it is coming soon, where we can wrap this whole thing up, and there will be a new heaven and a new earth, and there will be no more weeping. There will be no more mourning. There will simply be joy and mercy and love and justice. But the good news is that we can live in this world as if that kingdom is accessible to us now, because I believe in my being that it truly is. Oh, how I quote the song. I believe that I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. That is here and now. That is not some disembodied idea that when I die, I will finally go to paradise. But no, I can demand paradise here. I can demand justice here. I can demand freedom for Samuel and for every other migrant who has tried to just simply build a new life for their family in light of fear of violence. I believe that in this life, I can hope for that. I can believe that I will see the goodness of the Lord in this land, the land of the living. Not in the afterlife, perhaps there too, but in this life, I will see it. That every child that has been separated from their family and put in cages along our southern border, that they might be free and might find healing and wholeness and justice, that they might experience love and mercy again. I believe that it is possible. That it is possible. There is work. There's significant work to be done. When we look out into the world as we approach the holiday season, religious traditions around the world celebrate, many celebrate a significant holiday in the next few weeks. Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, solstice. There is a celebration of how light is re-entering into the world after a period of darkening. We will begin to meditate on the season of Advent here shortly, as Advent begins a week from today, next Sunday. About how the light of the world has entered in, that there is a light breaking through the darkness, that as the psalmist said, that even in the darkness you will find us, O God. And so as we enter into Advent, I would encourage us all to consider the ways in which we might be a part, how we might participate, how we might be a part of bringing that light into these darkest places. It will cost us. I'm not going to pretend that it's not going to cost us. Being bearers of light is not easy. Being bearers of light is heavy. It is heavy work because of how dark this world is and how great the need is and how truly freedom is a constant struggle. It is not easy work, but we do not do it alone. We do it in the strength and the power of the one who said, I have come into the world to testify of this truth. And the truth is that there is a day coming where this is all going to come to an end and freedom will be at your doorstep. Love and joy and mercy and hope will all be fully embodied in your being. There is coming a day where the kingdoms of this world will have to bow to the one who said, this cannot stand, and I will toss all of this evil into the sea so that everyone, and I do mean everyone, might be free. Jesus is king, not in some hyper-militaristic way, not in some colonial, imperial way in which the church has often painted King Jesus as. But Jesus is the good king that says, I will pay the ultimate price to bring about the end of evil and usher in to the world new life. And so I ask you all to consider how you might participate in the truth-telling of Jesus, bearing light, that indeed there is a kingdom that is not of this world, and in that kingdom, all can be free. All will be free. There will be no more mourning. There will be no more crying, no more weeping, simply rejoicing. For indeed, we will all be free.